Boston, 1970s, a city where organized crime wasn't just a business, it was a way of life. In the shadows of South Boston's housing projects, one man was building an empire. His name was James Joseph Bulger, but everyone called him Whitey. Born in 1929, Whitey grew up poor, but he was smart, ruthless, and ambitious. By age 14, he'd already been arrested for larceny and assault. He spent time in reformatories, then graduated to bank robbery. In 1956, he was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for armed robbery. He served time at Alcatraz, one of America's most notorious prisons. Behind bars, he reportedly volunteered for LSD experiments run by the CIA. Released in 1965, Whitey returned to Boston a changed man. Harder, smarter, more dangerous. He quickly joined the Winter Hill Gang, a violent Irish mob operating in South Boston. The gang controlled gambling, extortion, and drug trafficking across Boston. But Whitey wasn't satisfied being just another gang member. In 1972, he helped orchestrate the murder of rival gang leaders. By eliminating the competition, he positioned himself for a takeover. In 1979, the Winter Hill Gang's leadership was arrested for race fixing. Whitey Bulger seized control of the entire operation. At age 50, he'd become the most powerful crime boss in Boston. But running a criminal empire required staying one step ahead of law enforcement. The FBI in Boston was obsessed with taking down the Italian mafia. The Patriarca crime family, Boston's Italian mob, was their primary target. And in 1975, the FBI found a way to get inside the Italian mob. They approached Whitey Bulger with an offer: become an FBI informant. In exchange for information on the Italian mob, the FBI would protect him. Whitey agreed, but he had no intention of playing by their rules. His FBI handler was Special Agent John Connolly. Connolly grew up in the same South Boston housing projects as Whitey. They had history, and Whitey knew exactly how to exploit that connection. What the FBI didn't realize was that they were about to make a deal with the devil. From 1975 onward, Whitey Bulger became an official FBI informant. But instead of the FBI using him, he was using them. While pretending to feed them information on the Italian mob, Whitey was actually receiving protection to run his own criminal empire. The FBI was warning him when other agencies were investigating him. They were tipping him off about witnesses who might testify against him. And some of those witnesses ended up dead. 1975 marked the beginning of one of the most corrupt partnerships in FBI history. Connolly reported to FBI headquarters that he'd recruited a major informant. His supervisors celebrated. They thought they'd finally infiltrated the Winter Hill Gang. But Whitey had already begun feeding them useless information. He gave them names of low-level Italian mobsters who were already under investigation. The FBI thought they were getting insider secrets. They were getting nothing. Meanwhile, Whitey was getting something far more valuable: advance warning. Connolly began warning Whitey whenever local police were investigating him. If the DEA was building a case, Connolly told him. If state police were preparing a raid, Connolly told him. If someone was planning to testify against him, Connolly told him that too. In exchange, Whitey gave Connolly just enough information to keep him looking good. The Italian mob began to fall. Arrests, indictments, convictions, and the FBI took all the credit. Connolly was praised as a brilliant agent. Nobody at FBI headquarters knew the truth. Connolly had been corrupted. Whitey wasn't working for Connolly. Connolly was working for Whitey. In 1980, Whitey's gang murdered a man named Louis Liddell. Liddell had been Connolly's handball partner. They were friends. Connolly knew Whitey had ordered the hit. He did nothing. The corruption had become complete. Connolly chose Whitey over his own friend. But Connolly wasn't alone. His supervisor, John Morris, was compromised too. Whitey had given Morris $5,000 in cash. Morris accepted the bribe. Now 2 FBI agents were protecting Whitey. Between 1975 and 1985, Whitey Bulger committed dozens of crimes under FBI protection: murder, extortion, drug trafficking, loan sharking, witness intimidation. Every time another agency tried to investigate, the FBI protected him. Local Boston police suspected Whitey of multiple murders. The FBI told them to back off. Whitey was their informant. The DEA had Whitey under surveillance for drug trafficking. The FBI shut down the DEA investigation. Massachusetts State Police prepared a racketeering case against him. The FBI convinced them to delay the indictment, then delay it again. For years, they delayed it. Whitey kept operating. By the mid-1980s, one thing had become clear. Whitey Bulger didn't just have an FBI handler. He owned the FBI's Boston office. The Bureau of Investigation had become the Bulger Bureau of Investigation. The 1980s. Whitey Bulger's criminal empire was at its peak. He controlled every illegal racket in South Boston. Gambling, drugs, extortion, protection rackets. His gang was pulling in millions of dollars a year. And the FBI wasn't just protecting him. They were helping him eliminate competition. In 1981, a rival gang member named Roger Wheeler was murdered in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Whitey's gang was responsible. The FBI didn't investigate. In 1982, they murdered John Callahan in Miami. In 1984, they strangled Deborah Hussey in a house in South Boston. Whitey personally murdered her. FBI knew. FBI did nothing. Between 1975 and 1990, Whitey killed at least 19 people. Every single one of those murders happened while he was an FBI informant. Former gang member Kevin Weeks later testified about the killing spree. He said, "When Jim Bulger decided to kill somebody, he killed him. There was no changing his mind. And people knew it." Whitey buried some bodies in secret locations around Boston. Others were dumped and never found. The FBI had informant reports detailing these murders. They filed them away and did nothing. In 1985, a federal prosecutor wanted to indict Whitey for racketeering. Connolly intervened personally. The indictment was blocked. By this point, Connolly wasn't even pretending anymore. He was brazenly protecting a serial killer. And his superiors let it happen. FBI headquarters received complaints about Connolly's relationship with Whitey. They ignored them. Connolly was bringing in results against the Italian mob. That's all that mattered to them. The end justified the means. In 1990, Connolly retired from the FBI with full honors. He'd served 22 years. He'd been corrupt for 15 of them. After retirement, Connolly got a job at Boston Edison. He was hired specifically because of his FBI connections. Whitey made sure he was taken care of. For Whitey, the 1980s had been perfect. Complete impunity. He could kill anyone he wanted. The FBI protected him. He owned the most powerful law enforcement agency in America. But in the early 1990s, everything started to unravel. 1994, other federal agencies had finally had enough. They went around the FBI and began building their own case. A federal grand jury was convened. Whitey didn't know. For the first time in 20 years, the FBI wasn't warning him. In December 1994, the grand jury handed down a secret indictment. 19 counts. Murder, racketeering, extortion, drug trafficking. The arrest warrant was issued. Federal agents prepared to move. But Connolly found out about the indictment. Even though he'd retired, he still had friends in the Boston FBI office. On December 23, 1994, Connolly called Whitey. He told him, "They're coming for you. Tonight." Whitey packed a bag. He called his girlfriend, Catherine Gregg. By the time federal agents arrived at his house, he was gone. He'd vanished hours before the arrest. Tipped off one last time. The FBI had let him escape. Again. When the press found out, it became a national scandal. The Boston Globe began investigating the FBI's relationship with Whitey. Connolly was arrested in 1999 and charged with racketeering. His supervisor John Morris got immunity for testifying. The FBI's corruption was exposed, but Whitey was still gone. In 1999, he was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted list. He was number 2 on the list, behind only Osama bin Laden. The reward for his capture, $2 million. But Whitey had learned from the best. He knew how to disappear. He and Catherine Gregg moved constantly, never staying anywhere long. Wyoming, Louisiana, Mississippi, Chicago, New York. They lived quietly, used fake IDs, paid everything in cash. Whitey grew a beard, let his hair go white, wore glasses. He looked like any other elderly man. In 2006, there was a sighting in San Diego. An off-duty Boston cop saw him at a movie theater. The movie was The Departed, the film based on Whitey's life. When they made eye contact, Whitey ran. By the time backup arrived, he was gone. Again. For 16 years, The FBI couldn't find the man they'd once protected. 2011, the FBI changed tactics. They realized they'd never find Whitey, but they could find Catherine Gregg. Gregg had a history of getting plastic surgery and dental work. The FBI contacted plastic surgeons and dentists nationwide. They found recent photos of Gregg from a surgeon's office. The FBI created a nationwide TV campaign targeting her. The ads ran in 14 cities. The reward was $2 million. Within 24 hours, a former neighbor in Santa Monica called the tip line. She recognized Gregg from the TV ad. She'd been living next door. The address: Princess Eugenia Apartments, Santa Monica, California. FBI agents surrounded the building. It was June 22, 2011. They had the building manager lure Charlie Gasco to the parking garage. The manager told him there was a problem with his storage locker. At 5:45 p.m., Whitey Bulger walked into the parking garage. FBI agents moved in, guns drawn. FBI, don't move. He was 81 years old. He'd been free for 16 years. Agent, what's your name? Whitey, Charlie Gasco. Agent, we know who you are. Whitey smiled. You know who I am. I'm Whitey Bulger. Inside the apartment, agents found $800,000 in cash hidden in walls. They found 30 guns and a library of books about Whitey Bulger. He'd been reading about himself, following his own legend. He was extradited to Boston to face trial. The trial began in June 2013. 2 months. 63 witnesses. Kevin Weeks described how Whitey strangled victims. Families of victims confronted him in court. He showed no remorse. The prosecution presented the FBI corruption evidence. They showed how Connolly had protected him for 15 years. Whitey claimed he was never an informant. He called it a lie. But the evidence was overwhelming. 700 pages of FBI informant files. August 12, 2013. The jury reached a verdict. Guilty on 31 counts, including 11 murders. Guilty of racketeering, extortion, conspiracy, money laundering. November 14, 2013. Sentencing. 2 consecutive life sentences plus 5 years. He'd die in prison. He was 84 years old. October 30, 2018. Whitey Bulger was found dead at USP Hazleton, murdered by inmates at age 89. A violent end to a violent life.